Join the community that believes no betrayal should go unanswered. The boxes were heavy. Not because of their contents, just clothes, some journals, old sketchbooks, but because of what they meant. Natalie Rhodes stood in the driveway of her childhood home, staring at the weathered bricks, the peeling white shutters, and the porch where she had once watched summer storms roll in with her dad. Now she was being asked, no, told, to leave. "We just think you'll be happier in LA," her mother said with a smile so tight it looked like it might snap. "There's more opportunity there. More fashion, you know." Fashion. That word used to light her up. Natalie had spent her entire 20s turning scraps of fabric into something magical. Her sewing machine, a clunky old beast she'd saved up for during college, was her therapist, her best friend, her weapon. With it, she'd launched her own label, Rhodes and Thread, from the tiny attic of this very house. She'd gone from Etsy orders to dressing indie film stars at Sundance. And then her sister Bianca graduated. Bianca the star. Bianca the influencer. Bianca who had once spilled red wine on Natalie's first runway sample and laughed it off with, "Oh come on, who's even gonna wear this?" Now she was the family's new vision. A lifestyle YouTuber with a curated feed and a podcast about authentic living. When she hinted that she wanted to start her own brand, something effortless but luxe, their parents had sprung into action. Natalie didn't notice the knife until it was halfway into her back. Her father, Victor, called it a smart investment. They remortgaged the house to give Bianca seed money. The same house Natalie had saved in her 20s, covering mortgage payments after her dad's failed startup left them on the brink. The same house she turned down a scholarship for just to stay close and support the family business. She thought she'd earned a place here. A permanent one. Apparently not. "We need the space," her mom added, not quite meeting Natalie's eyes. "Bianca's setting up a studio downstairs. We're planning some collaborations." Natalie nodded slowly. Her fingers tightened around the handle of the box. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She didn't ask, "What about everything I gave up for you?" She just turned and walked to her car, loading the boxes carefully in the back seat. There was a letter in her glove box. She'd written it 6 months ago during one of her darker nights, just in case. She didn't know if she'd mail it. Not yet. But the plan was already forming. If they were going to erase her, she would make sure they remembered every stitch. Natalie didn't go to Los Angeles. She drove 3 towns over to the edge of a quiet neighborhood where the hills kissed the skyline, and the air didn't reek of betrayal. Her cousin Layla lived there, a graphic designer turned NFT cynic with a heart too big for her own good. When Natalie showed up at her door, box in arms and pain in her eyes, Layla didn't ask questions. She simply stepped aside and said, "Top shelf of the fridge is mine. Everything else, yours." For the first few days, Natalie moved like a ghost. She answered no calls, returned no texts, ignored Bianca's latest video titled, "My Big New Chapter," which she knew without watching would be filmed in her old room. She couldn't even look at fabric without her fingers shaking. Then came the call from the bank. "Miss Rhodes, this is just a courtesy reminder about the equity line taken out on the Maple Drive property." Her throat tightened. "I'm sorry, what equity line?" Pause. Then the woman on the other end clarified. The house had been used as collateral. "You'll need to speak with the current deed holder. A Victor Rhodes." Her father. Natalie sat frozen for a full 10 minutes. Not just because they had taken out a second loan, but because she knew what that meant. They had leveraged the house again, this time fully for Bianca's brand. She hadn't even been informed. Not a single word. No warning. No, "Hey Nat, by the way, remember that house you saved when you were 24? We just bet it all on your sister's collagen lip gloss." It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was erasure. They were rewriting history, building a narrative where Natalie was never the savior, never the backbone, never the one who held the damn roof up through 2 recessions. She could scream, sure. She could show up at family dinner and slam documents on the table. But it wouldn't change anything. They had made their choice. So she made hers. She contacted her old friend Everett Blake, a quiet, ruthless estate attorney with a memory like an elephant and no love for people who played dirty with family. He'd helped her years ago when she'd wanted to register roads and Thread as a family trust, a tax-saving move her dad scoffed at. But Everett had filed the paperwork anyway, in Natalie's name only. And then a miracle in plain ink. Because Natalie had repaid the mortgage on the house in full at one point, the title had briefly passed through her before being signed back to her father. That window, that brief 6-month ownership, was still on record. And legally, that gave her a right to contest how the house had been handled, especially if she could prove financial manipulation, family coercion, and fraudulent intent. Everett leaned back in his chair, tapping a pen against his lip. "You want to scorch the earth, Natalie?" She looked at the document. Then up at him. "No," she said. "I want to plant something better where the weeds used to be." 2 weeks later, Natalie walked into the dusty county records office with a stack of signed affidavits and a steel spine. Her heels clicked across the tiled floor like punctuation marks in a declaration of war. Behind her, Everett carried a briefcase filled with notarized letters, tax filings, and a list of every bank transfer she'd ever made for the Maple Drive property. She hadn't slept in nearly 48 hours. Layla had tried to make her chamomile tea and play old Taylor Swift records to calm her down, but Natalie was running on caffeine, vengeance, and clarity. The clerk barely glanced up. "How can I help you?" Natalie placed the documents on the counter like a poker hand laid flat. "I'm challenging the deed transfer on 712 Maple Drive. It was done without full disclosure and under financial misrepresentation." The woman blinked, clearly not used to someone dressed like a Vogue editor showing up to overturn family property law. "You'll need to submit a formal request. It can take weeks, sometimes months." "We'll wait," Everett cut in. "We're filing an emergency injunction as well. If approved, all financial actions on the property will be frozen until this is resolved." The clerk took the papers, eyes scanning faster now. Natalie didn't flinch. She had built a brand from nothing. She had paid off a mortgage at 24. She had swallowed being pushed out of her own family's narrative like she was a supporting act to Bianca's main character syndrome. But this was the line. That night she finally watched Bianca's video. Her sister sat in Natalie's old room, lips puffed with filler, wearing a robe that used to be Natalie's, talking about taking bold steps and surrounding yourself with people who believe in you. Natalie snorted. The only bold step Bianca had taken was over Natalie's back on her way to TikTok stardom. Scrolling through the comments, she saw nothing but praise. "OMG Queen Energy. Your parents are so supportive, that's rare. Manifesting this type of family love." Natalie closed the app. They could have the internet. She'd take reality. The next day the injunction went through. The house was frozen. No refinancing, no new credit lines, no legal sale. All because Natalie had proven through paper trails and cold facts that the very foundation of the second mortgage was a lie, a debt born not from shared consent but from betrayal. Her parents didn't call. Bianca sent a voice memo that started with, "WF Natalie?" and ended with, "You're literally ruining my life." But Natalie wasn't done. She dug deeper. Into the business account her father used for consulting, which had mysteriously received monthly brand advisory fees from Bianca's company. Into her mother's discretionary spending, which matched exactly to a trip Bianca took to Paris. The same week Natalie's birthday went ignored. Piece by piece, she unraveled a hidden web of favoritism and misused funds. And she found something that made her stomach twist. A shell company in Bianca's name, funded through loans taken out on assets Natalie had paid for. They had used her like a bank. And now the debt collectors had arrived. The call came late on a Sunday evening. A trembling voice on the other end of the line. It was her mother. "Natalie, can we talk?" Natalie stared at the name on her phone screen. It had been months since she'd heard from either parent directly. Only passive-aggressive emails, cold legal responses, or Bianca's tantrums blasted on Instagram stories. She paused, then answered, "Speak." Her mother's voice cracked. "We didn't know it would go this far. Your father he's been served with papers. The trust is frozen. The house is under legal review for fraudulent refinancing," Natalie interrupted. "I know." A long silence. "We just wanted to help Bianca. She's so close to that contract with Netflix and we thought." "You thought I wouldn't fight back," Natalie said coolly. "That I'd keep playing the dependable daughter who never makes waves. That I wouldn't notice my name was missing from everything I paid for." "We didn't mean to hurt you," her mother whispered. "But you did," Natalie replied. "You hurt me for 10 years straight." They arranged a meeting at the house. Natalie walked in the front door like a storm front wrapped in designer armor. Black slacks, navy silk blouse, and a trench coat that whispered expensive silence. Layla came with her, not saying much but recording everything with her eyes. Bianca was already there. No cameras today. No makeup. She looked small without her filters. "You're really going through with this?" Bianca said. "You're taking our childhood home?" Natalie almost laughed. "You mean my childhood home? The one I paid off while you were in Ibiza figuring out your brand voice." Bianca stepped forward, fury barely held back. "You're jealous." "Of what?" Natalie's voice never rose. "Of being a family scapegoat while you played the victim? Of being told I was too boring to support while you got plane tickets and creative sabbaticals?" Their father sat in the corner, face gray, silent. When Natalie turned to him, he wouldn't meet her eyes. "Dad." "Nothing." So she walked to the coffee table and placed down a single sheet of paper. The title transfer form from the irrevocable trust she created, now legally binding. "This house isn't yours anymore," she said. "It's in my name. Through a trust. Bianca can't touch it. Neither can you. You'll stay here as long as I allow. And the moment Bianca films anything in this house again, you're both out." Their mother choked on a sob. "Please, Natalie. We didn't think it would come to this." "That's the problem," she said. "You never thought I mattered enough to fight back." Bianca lunged at her, not physically but with words. "You're evil." Natalie tilted her head, a sad smile forming. "No. I just stopped letting you eat me alive." She left without another word. That night she changed the locks. And for the first time in a decade she slept without a single ounce of guilt in her chest. The next morning, Natalie stood at the top of the staircase with a hot mug of black coffee, staring down into the living room of the house that once broke her. Now it was hers. Truly hers. The locksmith had come at dawn. The sound of the drill biting into the old brass lock was oddly satisfying, like the final bolt sealing shut the tomb of who she used to be. She didn't just change the locks. She changed the alarm codes. Reset the Wi-Fi. Cancelled the utilities under her parents' names and switched everything to a new account. Legally, ethically, flawlessly. The trust made it airtight. Bianca, true to form, had already taken to social media. "Can you believe my own sister locked us out of the house we grew up in? He's sick. He's dangerous. #family betrayal #help me Netflix." Natalie didn't flinch. Instead, she drafted a polite cease and desist through her lawyer, citing false accusations, harassment, and privacy invasion. Layla sent her a screenshot later that day. Bianca had deleted the posts. Natalie laughed to herself. Quiet. A little bitter. A little free. But then came the knock. It was late, around 10 p.m., and she almost didn't answer. But she looked through the peephole and froze. It was her father. Alone. No anger. No arrogance. Just an old man in a worn coat holding something in his hands. She opened the door, but not all the way. "What do you want?" she asked softly. He held out a box. Inside it was a stack of papers, yellowed envelopes, and a dusty journal with her name scribbled in her mother's handwriting. "Your mother, she's not well. I think losing the house is breaking her more than she admits." Natalie didn't reply. "She wanted you to have this," he continued, nodding at the box. Said it's your childhood. Said we don't deserve to keep it. Natalie looked into his eyes. For the first time in a long time they looked human. Not perfect. Not forgiven. But human. I don't know how to fix any of this, he murmured. I don't even know where to start. Natalie took the box. Her fingers brushed his old skin thinner than she remembered. You don't start, she said. You sit with the wreckage. And you wait until someone believes you've earned the right to speak again. She closed the door gently. That night she opened the journal. The first page held a drawing. 6-year-old Natalie had drawn a picture of her family in front of the house. The house she had just reclaimed. And somehow in the quiet she wept. Not for them. For herself. The little girl in that drawing who never stopped hoping they'd choose her one day. Days passed, but Natalie didn't feel the satisfaction she thought revenge would bring. She wasn't sad, not exactly. Just hollow. Like all the anger that had propelled her forward had burned out, leaving her drifting in a silence she didn't know how to fill. The house was too quiet. Every creak in the hardwood floor was a memory. Every echo down the hallway was a ghost. Natalie tried filling the space, rearranging furniture, repainting walls, tossing out old rugs that still smelled like her mother's lavender detergent. She even knocked out the ugly cabinet her father once forbade her from touching, just to feel some small piece of control. Layla came by to help, and so did Aunt Rachel. They didn't say much, they just worked. They tore down the old drapes, scrubbed the kitchen tiles clean, replaced the cracked family portraits with sunlight and clean walls. You're not just reclaiming space, Aunt Rachel said while folding up an old tablecloth. You're exorcising it. Natalie nodded, tears threatening to surface. Then the letter came. An official envelope. Gold seal. From a legal firm she didn't recognize. Inside was a typed letter. Brief, cold, formal. Mrs. Natalie Brooks. We are contacting you as representatives of Bianca Brooks. Our client is seeking legal compensation for emotional distress and unlawful eviction. Natalie blinked. Unlawful? She sat back and read it again. Then again. She hadn't evicted them. The house had legally changed hands. Assigned notarized trust. Filed through the courts. Everything above board. She called her attorney and he laughed softly. They're bluffing, he said. Trying to bait you into a settlement or reaction. Natalie exhaled through her nose. Bianca wasn't just bitter. She was weaponizing victimhood. But Natalie wasn't the same scared girl from 10 years ago. She didn't tremble at conflict anymore. She called Layla. Hey, Natalie said. You know that podcast we talked about? The one about financial abuse and family betrayal. You ready to record? Layla asked, voice lighting up. More than that, Natalie replied. I'm ready to name names. Layla paused. Are you sure? Natalie smiled. I'll change the names, but the story, the pain, the lessons, they belong to me now. The next week, the first episode went live. It was raw, honest. A woman telling her story not for pity, but for others to recognize their own. The response was overwhelming. Emails, comments, messages from strangers who said, "You just told my story. I thought I was alone." Bianca tried to fire back online, but her clout was fading fast. The truth was louder than her filtered, curated rage. And for the first time in her life, Natalie didn't feel like the victim. He felt like a lighthouse. A warning. A guide for others still trapped in the storm. Natalie didn't expect to find the journal. It was tucked away behind a false panel in the attic. The very same attic she used to be forbidden from entering as a child. Dust caked the floor and spiderwebs draped the rafters like morbid lace. She was searching for old financial documents for the trust's audit, but what she found instead was a leather-bound book with her mother's handwriting scrawled across the cover. For when the truth matters more than the facade. She opened it slowly. Page after page bled ink and emotion. A confession, a chronicle, a quiet unraveling. Her mother had written everything. The bankruptcy. The reason they nearly lost the house a decade ago. The lies they told to get Natalie to pay off the mortgage. It was never about saving the family. It was about saving face. There was even a letter dated 3 years back. Natalie, if you're reading this, I failed you. Your father convinced me we had no choice. But I knew it was wrong to sacrifice your future so your brother could chase something that never truly mattered. You were our rock and we leaned on you until you cracked. And I'm sorry. You deserved better parents than we were. Natalie sat in the dim light, the words swimming before her eyes. She couldn't tell if she felt validated or shattered. Maybe both. Later that night she read the journal cover to cover again. Then she took it to her attorney. This changes things, he said. It confirms coercion, manipulation, and misappropriation of funds. Can we go after the new loan they took on the house? The one they tried to sneak through before I transferred the deed. He nodded. With this, we absolutely can. Natalie wasn't out for blood. But she was done absorbing the damage. The lawsuit that followed wasn't loud. It wasn't messy. It was surgical, precise, and unstoppable. When the courts reviewed the journal, the forged signatures, and the financial trail, they nullified the second mortgage her parents had taken out behind her back. The bank lost. The house remained untouchable. More importantly, Natalie's name remained untarnished. Her family, however, wasn't so lucky. Bianca's influencer partnerships quietly dissolved. Her father's consulting firm dropped him from its portfolio. And her mother, once revered in the local church community, withdrew from public life altogether. Natalie never gloated. She didn't need to. The facts spoke for themselves. Justice didn't always wear armor. Sometimes it wore silence. Sometimes it looked like a woman reclaiming her power, not with fire but with truth. The morning air was sharp and still when Natalie pulled into the driveway, her driveway now undisputed. The legal battle was over, the trust airtight, and the house for the first time in her life fully hers. She stepped out of the car and stood for a moment, watching the breeze sway the worn wind chimes on the porch. The sound, once comforting, now felt like a memory playing on loop. In her hand was the new set of keys. She didn't need them. The door still opened with the old brass one she had used since childhood. But something about turning a fresh key in a lock that had held so many betrayals. It felt like reclaiming something intangible. Peace. Control. The house was empty now. Her parents had been court-ordered to vacate within 30 days. They left behind furniture, boxes, and a note on the kitchen counter. Just 4 words scribbled in her father's jagged script. We hope you're happy. She stared at it, unmoved. Because she was. Happy didn't look like revenge. It looked like stillness. It looked like knowing no one could ever steal from her again without consequences. Natalie walked through each room slowly. The creaky hallway where she used to tiptoe past arguments. The back bedroom where Bianca once locked herself in for content creation. The kitchen where every Sunday used to be a hostage situation in politeness. Now it was just a house. A house she could finally rebuild, on her terms. She started upstairs, opening windows, letting the stale air drift out. She paused in her old bedroom. Her teenage posters had been stripped long ago, but the scent of lemon furniture polish lingered. On the closet door, a faint sticker mark still clung to the wood. A reminder of the honor student badge she once proudly displayed. That girl was gone. In her place stood a woman who had been used, underestimated, and manipulated, but who had chosen not to break. Natalie walked outside, picked up her phone, and called her cousin Jasmine. It's done, she said. Finally, Jasmine replied. You coming over for dinner? Natalie smiled. Actually, I was hoping you'd come here. I want to start fresh, and I need someone to help me rip up that hideous carpet. Laughter crackled through the receiver. I'll bring wine and a crowbar. As the sun dipped low, casting golden light through the blinds, Natalie knew one thing for certain. This wasn't just her home again. This was her beginning. The renovations began quietly. Natalie didn't bring in a crew. She didn't post it online. No grand reveal. Just her, Jasmine, and eventually Aunt Rachel. Painting, sanding, pulling up rotted floorboards and memories alike. The living room was first. Gone were the pretentious velvet drapes her mother insisted gave the house class. Gone was the ancient TV stand with the dent from the time her father threw a remote. Natalie replaced them with soft white curtains and open shelving. Clean, simple. Honest. By the end of the second week, the house started to breathe again. But some things didn't leave so easily. In the attic, behind a trunk of old tax records and unopened boxes labeled Bianca's sponsors, Natalie found a folder tucked beneath the insulation. It was addressed to her. Her full name in her mother's handwriting. Heart pounding, Natalie opened it. Inside were old bank statements, dating back over a decade, not of her parents but of an account in her name, one she had never opened. She flipped through, jaw tightening. Every deposit was from her checks, her jobs, her freelance payments, even her tutoring gigs in college. But the balance never grew. Each month, the funds had been moved, funneled to a secondary account, one she didn't recognize. Then she found it. A notarized form, signed with her forged signature, granting power of access to her father. Natalie sat down hard on the attic floor. They had stolen from her longer than she even knew. Not just emotionally but legally, financially, systematically. And they had hidden the proof in the house they'd tried to keep her out of. She scanned every page, took photos and emailed them to herself. Not out of revenge. Out of principle. She wasn't sure yet if she'd press charges, but now the choice was hers. That night she couldn't sleep. She sat on the porch with a blanket, staring at the stars. Jasmine joined her, holding mugs of tea. "You okay?" she asked gently. Natalie nodded. "Just realizing I've been asleep for 10 years. Jasmine squeezed her shoulder. "Then it's time to wake up swinging." They clinked mugs and Natalie felt the edges of something she hadn't in a long time. Not relief, not anger, but resolve. There was still more truth buried in the past. And she was done pretending not to dig. It was raining the morning Natalie walked into the county clerk's office. Not the soft drizzle of sad movies. No, this was the kind of rain that pounded pavement, thudded against windshields and made people run for cover. She didn't run. She walked straight through it, soaked to the bone, armed with the truth. She had an appointment with the clerk who handled deed records. "I'd like to formally challenge a fraudulent use of power of attorney," she said, sliding the photocopies of the forged documents across the counter. The woman raised an eyebrow, then took her time reading. "You have originals?" "Not yet," Natalie said. "But the notary who signed off on this is under investigation. And I've retained counsel." The clerk nodded slowly. "I'll open a provisional case file. But be careful, honey. These things have a way of getting ugly before they get better." "I'm not afraid of ugly anymore," Natalie replied. Later that week she received confirmation. The case was being reviewed. The house no longer felt like a tomb. It felt like a witness. As if every creaky board, every chipped tile had stored a little truth, waiting for someone brave enough to ask for it. And then came the letter. Handwritten. No return address. Natalie unfolded it on the kitchen counter, heart thudding. "I know what you found. It's not what you think. Please don't go public. It will destroy the family. Dad." No apology. No explanation. Just a plea for silence. Natalie laughed, dry and bitter. Destroy the family? That ship had sailed the moment they sold her out for a fantasy. She didn't want vengeance in the way they feared. She didn't want to destroy them. She wanted them to see. To feel what it was like to be discarded, manipulated, and used. So she invited them back. For dinner. No context. Just a polite, printed invitation in the mail to her parents, Bianca, and even Trent. He told Aunt Rachel not to worry. I just want them to see what I've done with the place, she said. But you own it now, right? Rachel asked. Fully. Truly and legally. Yes. Rachel nodded slowly. Then I trust you. Just don't give them an inch. I won't. The table was set with mismatched plates. Home-cooked food. Candles flickering. Her parents arrived first. Then Bianca and Trent, both dressed like they were filming something. Everyone sat, tense and silent. Natalie looked around the table and smiled softly. I just wanted you all to see the house. My house. It remembers everything, even the things you thought you buried. Her father opened his mouth, but she raised her hand. No speeches. I have one thing to say, and then you're going to leave. She reached under her chair and pulled out a folder, the original documents. Her aunt had found them locked in a case in the basement behind the furnace. This is the evidence, Natalie said. Of theft. Of forgery. Of betrayal. Her mother gasped. Bianca looked like she might faint. You're not going to jail, Natalie continued. Not unless I press charges. But I want something more than that. Silence. I want you to know that I saved this house. I fixed it. I made it livable again. You tried to erase me from it, but now it carries my name. She stood. You can go. They left one by one. No apologies. Just shame and silence. Jasmine came in a few minutes later with Rachel. You okay? They asked in unison. Natalie nodded. I'm home. Spring came late that year, but when it did, it brought warmth that seemed to seep into every corner of the old house. Natalie stood barefoot on the porch, sipping coffee as birds chirped in the distance. The garden she'd once ignored was now full of life. Jasmine vines twisted along the fence. Tulips popped up defiantly along the walkway. Inside, the walls had been painted anew. Not to erase the past, but to honor how far she'd come. She still got letters, not from her parents, but from neighbors who heard about the girl who won her house back. Some wanted to share their own stories. Some just wrote to say they were proud of her. Natalie had started speaking too. First at community meetings, then at local women's centers. Eventually, she was invited to speak on a podcast about financial abuse and silent exploitation within families. And she told her story. Not for fame. Not for revenge. But so someone else, someone like the version of her who had once believed she was only valuable when she was giving, might hear it and realize they were worth more. Bianca and Trent eventually split. Publicly, quietly. His career fizzled. Hers stalled. Natalie didn't celebrate, but she didn't mourn either. As for her parents, they moved out of state. She received a card that Christmas. We hope you're well. We're sorry for everything. Love, Mom. Natalie didn't respond. But she kept the card, not as a gesture of forgiveness, but as proof that they could admit something even if too late. And when the first snowfall of the new winter came, Natalie lit a fire in the hearth, curled up on her couch with a blanket and whispered to the walls. I'm not broken. I was just buried. And now I bloom. Team forgiveness or team revenge? Drop your side in the comments. She lost everything, and still came out stronger. Remember her name.